but events, dear boy, events. Andy Farrell is the new Ireland rugby head coach. Has been announced. He'll take over in 2019. Alan Quinlan, good morning to you.
Good morning, Joe.
Joe Schmidt's gone. The king is dead. Long live the king.
Yeah, it's look, we knew it was coming, to be honest, and it's understandable. It's a relentless kind of pressure, and there's a lot of work that goes into it, and he's done a remarkable job. By his own admission, he's a workaholic. We hear that a lot from the players, and that quote, attention to detail all the time. He just leaves no stone unturned, and that's his nature. And yeah, so he's going to get a break now, and I think the big goal for him, it's still 11 months of the World Cup, so it'll be keep the players at that high standard and try and keep the team winning, and that drive and desire won't change. I think it's a disappointing scenario, but you can never replace someone like him. But I think Andy Farrell is someone who has been in the system for the last couple of years with Joe Schmidt, will have learned a lot. He rebounded from the disappointment with England, and he knows the inside track now of all these players, what makes them tick, how the game works well here, the systems work well. So I'd be very comfortable and very pleased with his decision to to have that succession plan. It's good business from the IRFU again, and look, it was a ready-made coach there, ready to take over. It just depends who's going with him, who'll come in to assist, and that stuff now. Yeah,
you would assume, so Easterby is under contract until 2020,
yeah.
And is anybody else? Is Greg Feek?
Greg Feek, I think, is contracted as well. I'm not 100% sure on the position. I know that some of the coaches signed new contracts this year, but it's not a case of in soccer where you bring your own crew with you. I think sometimes in rugby, and we've seen that over the years.
It's good to be challenged.
Yeah, well, there's people in place, and you either slot in with them, or it's not about egos in any way. And the system is a little bit different. People in rugby tend to, I know they want their own men, particularly in club jobs, but at this level, if there's people in place, I think. And there'll have to be an addition, I think, whether that be a Stuart Lancaster or Ronan O'Gara or somebody else.
Moving to Japan. Sorry,
he's moving to Japan.
Yeah. I forgot about that. That was announced.
So they look for a new scrum coach as well. And, but yeah, I think the main job is make sure you have the main man and you can kind of build around him. There's a lot of good young Irish coaches as well. So I'd love to see O'Gara getting back involved, but maybe he'll want a head coach job. And he certainly will want to work with people who are very ambitious. And I know Andy Farrell is very, very driven, and the players, he inspires the players, and our defence at times has been leaky on occasions. The question is now, will he still do defence? Will he have a hands-on role, or will he kind of build a group around him as well?
So Joe Schmidt's statement, this is just breaking in the last 2 minutes. I've decided to finish coaching and will prioritise family commitments after the Rugby World Cup in 2019. That's not just finish coaching Ireland. That's not what that statement says.
That's a surprise, is it?
That's what
it's not a surprise. His son is well documented illness. He's epilepsy, and it's not for me to be talking about that because it's a very personal thing for Joe and his family, and I think he wants to spend more time at home. He wants to be part of the process of helping his sick child, and so, like I said, and any of the coaches, Jerry, you hear them talking. This is a 6 o'clock in the morning job till 10 o'clock at night. It's just a reality of modern day coaching in rugby.
Yeah.
For the club guys. Now, the international stuff is a little bit different, and I think when he moved from Leinster, that probably would have given him a little bit more time, but there's still a lot of stuff in between the windows of the international stuff, that you go to watch matches, you're still analysing a lot of the international players in the provinces and sending them information. That's what Joe has been doing.
Yeah, I mean, something like the Lions job would be perfect for Joe Schmidt. Like where you can.
Yeah, I think. Look, he can pick and choose.
That's not for 2 years.
Even he can pick and choose now. I think he's going to be in high demand.
I've decided to finish coaching. Will prioritise family commitments after the Rugby World Cup in 2019. I feel that Irish rugby is in good hands. The management and players have been incredible to work with, and the tremendous support we've had, particularly at home in the Aviva, but wherever we have travelled, has been uplifting. Thank you to the IRFU for their support and patience, and thanks also to so many people who have adopted my family and me, making us feel part of the community here in Ireland. There are some inspiring challenges left over the next 11 months, so there's plenty of motivation for me to continue working hard. alongside the other management staff so that the team can be as competitive as possible. So, and then they go on to talk about his records. He's used 99 players, capped 54 new internationals over the 62 games with a 74% win ratio. Their highest world ranking. The most successful period in the national team's history, 3 Six Nations titles, including a Grand Slam, a first win on South African soil, a first win over New Zealand, and a series win in Australia. Named Rugby World Coach of the Year in 2018, and we were named Team of the Year. So Philip Brown says, I'd like to thank Joe and his family on behalf of the IRFU Union Committee and all of the staff of Irish Rugby and every rugby supporter for everything he's done for the game in Ireland. He's travelled to clubs throughout the country, assisted with our sponsor programme, and attended a huge number of charity events, helping to raise vital funding for those who need it most. That's unbelievably true. You hear like just this kind of whispered awe of people who work in the charity sector about how often Joe Schmidt will show up, and frequently he'll be double booked for things. So he'll do like an afternoon, the pre-lunch, and then he'll travel somewhere and do the evening or the after lunch thing, and always seems to be in pretty good form for it. So like a lot of that stuff, you know, people talk about it and it's not really that big a deal, but actually he's been very committed to that and getting around right around the country. Like you know, random rugby club has Joe Schmidt giving out medals and won't be having to pay him the way that you would have to pay other people.
It's phenomenal. The amount of events, clubs, charity stuff he does is remarkable, and you don't hear about it, but you know, I think he's really, I always felt chatting to him that he felt he had an onus on him to do that stuff, and on occasions I've even said, like, you know, you're doing
too much.
Because I've done a few events with him, and I've been at lots of events, and I've been in that situation where he's been at one lunch and the window's only been like 45 minutes to chat to Joe or interview him, and because he's going to another lunch in somewhere else across town, and then he's going to an awards dinner in Wexford or Cork that night or up north or something. So he gave his time very, very generously to a lot of communities and a lot of clubs, and I think if you went out and asked people to come in and tell you stories about where he's been and where they've met him, you'd be amazed at the amount of stuff he's done. So he's been phenomenal really for Irish sport in general, rugby.
Stephen Kenny does something similar to 2 years' time as well, that he embraces that. Because you have to meet the people as well, you know. And I think Joe has so much class as well when you meet him. It's just like he just strikes you as a guy that has something about him, like, you know.
But the principles, I think, of coaching and structures and all that kind of stuff, everybody could learn from this guy. Do you know what I mean? Of how, you know, he's learned himself along the way, how to, you know, make sure no stone is unturned. Now the systems here are very good in the rugby, you know, and the structures, but
he always deflects attention away from himself.
Yeah, he doesn't take the credit, but he is relentless in that camp, and guys will tell you as well, you got to know your role. If the information is provided, you better know it and learn it, and it's not. He's tough.
Andy Farrell has the gig all the way through to the next World Cup. So we have a full 4-year World Cup cycle that Andy Farrell has got the job for. I'll finish off the statement here. So Andy Farrell commented, "It's a privilege to be considered for such a prestigious role. I've learned a lot from Joe over the past few seasons, and I will continue to learn from him over the next year as the coaching group and players focus on competing in 2 huge tournaments in 2019. Schmidt commented, "The coaches have been fantastic to work with. Andy's made a big impact since coming into the group. His ability to lead and his understanding of the game will ensure that the group will continue to move forward." Obviously, Andy joined the Ireland coaching group in 2016 ahead of the summer tour of South Africa. It says he's a key figure here. Before joining the setup, he was with England from 2012 to 2015 and Saracens, and then obviously coached on the 2 most recent Lions tours, which produced a series win in Australia and a drawn series in New Zealand. "We're delighted to have secured Andy as incoming head coach," says Philip Brown. "As part of Joe's management team, Andy has already helped to deliver huge performances. I know he'll continue to inspire our players for years to come. World-class coaching credentials, and please have a roadmap for an orderly transition post-Rugby World Cup to the 2019 Six Nations. The appointment provides certainty and continuity beyond Rugby World Cup 2019, says David Yusufor, with Andy leading the coaching group through the next World Cup cycle to the 2023 tournament in France." So wow, they've locked up a 5-year future.
It's a succession of successions in Irish sport this weekend.
You know, it's great, but what if we don't get out of our group at the World Cup?
Aside from that, I think having this smooth transition is important. And I think even if we didn't get out of the group, I think he's the best candidate because he knows...
If we don't get out of the group, is Stuart Lancaster not the best candidate? Or, you know, you have to war game for all potential. Like, I'm sure we're going to get out of the group, right? But let's just say for a moment, things happen, events, whatever.
Yeah, you probably make a relevant point there.
Give yourself a little bit of wiggle room.
He's a candidate anyway, yeah. And I think lots of coaches throughout the world would be a candidate. But I think it's this, what's been built now on, particularly with the players, the relationship with Andy Farrell. They love Andy Farrell.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I think, and obviously Leinster players love Stuart Lancaster as well. Would they team up together? Would they get involved together? I don't know. Will Stuart Lancaster go in as an assistant rather than, does he want to be head coach again? Would he leave the Leinster role to be an assistant with Ireland? I'm not sure. I think his next job, if he leaves Leinster, will be head coach somewhere. But I just think it gives that calmness, that continuity, and like there's so much stuff in the bank with all those victories and the run they've had. You know, South African soil, first win, you know, beating us, New Zealand twice, all that stuff. Farrell has been there for all that, Six Nations, the Grand Slam. You know, I think it's just that continuity. Now, I think it's important. He needs to appoint, maybe bring in someone who's going to be very good as well and really driven as well. But I like Andy Farrell, and I think he's tough, he's abrasive, he was hard. What a hard man when he played rugby league. And the players like him, and you hear that stuff coming out, and usually it's kind of driven by player power now, that information. I think he was a brilliant coup for Joe Schmidt. And like, to be fair to Schmidt, he doesn't suffer fools. Like, for him to go and get Andy Farrell, he saw
and for it to work,
really important. Yeah, for it to work. And you know, so I think, look, just having that continuity, it takes away some uncertainty. So the other side of that, Ger, is if you go, right, Joe's leaving and we'll decide on the coach next year, what do you do? Announce someone after the World Cup, or wait? And then there's kind of a bit of panic. And
it means that if there's somebody who's on the fringes of the World Cup squad that Andy Farrell thinks is going to be a mainstay over the next 4 years, Joe Schmidt's not the only one making that decision in the room going, well, like, I don't care about that. Like, you know, it's irrelevant really, but there's a mindset at least that, like, the be all and end all isn't just how we get on in the now, that you can plan for the future while also trying to win. Yeah, for sure. It gives that comfort and that calmness around the whole situation. Does it? Are you comfortable? Or, like, because I think Franos today is making the point in The Independent that whatever we say about this, it's all BS. There can be we're never going to reach this standard again. This is a golden age.
Okay, but I think what has happened now is they will take an awful lot of learnings from Joe's type of management. Andy will be a bit different. He won't be exactly the same, but I think the principles of the preparation, the detail, the information, the standard will continue, because he's a high achiever himself, Farrell. And he'll have different relationships with different guys, as all head coaches do. And but you can't ever replace Joe Schmidt. But we just gotta. I think this is the best case scenario, and I think Farrell can go and create his own legacy now and take control of the team himself. And I'm very excited about it. I think it's the right thing to do. I think Andy Farrell just has this presence about him when you meet him.
Yeah. He's a big man.
But aside from that, you just immediately feel passion, intensity, good bloke, old school as well. I like that about him. And, you know, like I said, that detailed stuff, he'll have his own information that he brought from his own playing career, coaching career. But, you know, there's kind of a standard there now that they've got to adhere to. And there's no guarantee this team is going to keep winning and have all this success, because they're going to have a lull at times. They're going to probably lose games. There's going to be tough times for him. But
he's only 43.
Yeah,
it's quite a, you know, by modern standards, it's quite a young age for international coaching.
Yeah, it is. But I think again, the players will have wanted this. Joe, the IRFU, they will have spoken to senior players. Who's the best man for the job? And I think he is ultimately the best man for the job at the moment.
Okay.
I find that quite surprising that the players would have that much input.
They'd be asked. I was asked when I played with Munster over the years, particularly towards the end of my career, when I was classed as more of a senior player and more of a mainstay in the team. You get information. You don't get asked you're not involved in the direct decision, but you're asked and your opinion on the type. Rugby is kind of like that. Well, you know, sometimes when you're out in the field and you get that kind of buzz off a coach and he's giving you this information, the way he's doing it, or the type of way he inspires you or the players around you. Like, players talk about that stuff. So to get that information from the senior players, so I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Obviously, if they say no way to a certain person at some stage, you've got to take that on board, because if the powers that be put this person in place, well, then you're going to alienate half the team who are going to be there for the next number of years. So I think it is important that what's he like, what's the coaching like, what's your take on it, here's a number of candidates. And senior players, I think it's important that they have a little bit of an input into it, to make sure you're going in the right direction. Like, if something jumps up really, obviously not everybody, in all sport, not every player likes the coach.
Of course, yeah.
Not every Irish player will love Joe Schmidt, because, you know, Joe probably is hard and he's tough, and some guys maybe mightn't like the style, but he's about results and he's about providing that information. And any team I've ever been involved in, no player everybody doesn't love the coach. It just doesn't happen. But you need that respect. If you respect the coach and you know that this guy's he's giving me proper information, he's making me better, he's providing that opportunity for me to get better, you have to have that respect. So having a little bit of impact from Rory Best, Johnny Sexton, Peter O'Mahony, Rob Carney, these guys have been around for a number of years about, well, look, Andy is someone we're looking at. What, is he ready? Do you think he can stand and command the room, that he can lead this group? And that would be taken into consideration.
A couple of things. You talked about the backroom team, obviously, so somebody else will probably have to look after defence. Maybe they won't, maybe he'll be able to do it and also be the head coach and look after everything else. So Greg Feek will have to go. So there will be some change.
There'll be a bit of change, yeah. There will be a bit of change. And I think those appointments are really important.
Does he have a say over that?
Of course he does, yeah.
Like, is it his final call, or does David Newsfora go, well, this is how this is going to work here, lads?
Would you think it wouldn't be Joe Schmidt's final call when he was there? I think it has to be Andy Farrell's final call. He's the one who's tasked with the job. Obviously, David Newsfora will have a big impact as well on who they chat and who they feel is right for the role. Whether they're Irish or not. I think the best people will be put in there. I'd like to see Irish people in there if we could, but it's really important that, you know, we don't know, is he going to do defence or is he going to oversee everything?
Is there an outstanding defensive coach to replace him just like that?
It's a good question. Look, I'm not sure. O'Gara has done defence for Racing. He's doing defence for Crusaders. Again, does he want to come in and be an assistant? Does he want to get a head coach job? I think he'd be a great fit for the job. Very, very driven. Like, I love the Andy Farrell attitude of that hardness about him, that kind of inspiring way. Rogers like that, Sexton is like that, O'Connell is like that. You know, when they can command a room and inspire people. Because sometimes it is a little bit old school rugby where you just got to front up and have the attitude right. So I'm not sure, Johnny, who'd be the candidates in Ireland, but it's his decision, and I think, you know, good people will be put in there, and that sometimes is good coaching.
Yeah.
Being a head coach is making sure your team underneath are meeting your requirements and the team's requirements, and that's a really important part of it.
I'm surprised that Schmidt has so definitively said he's going to finish coaching after, you know, maybe it's for a couple of years. You hope that he's not finished entirely, that actually there are jobs in the future that he'll come back to whenever he deals with whatever it is that he has to deal with. Does it change anything around the preparation for Ireland for the next 10, 11 months? I think everybody knew that.
We're all going to be asking questions and asking that question. Does it affect the you know, does it change the psyche of the players? Does it change his mentality? Is he going to be more relaxed? What's it going to mean? Like, he's so driven, I don't think it's going to change anything for him. The fact that Andy Farrell, and you made a very good point on that he's going to be there hovering in the background if he sees anyone maybe slacking in the white extended group, that's saying, well, Joe doesn't pick me, he's gone now, and I'm going to I'll get back in, or you know what I mean. It's great news. Joe doesn't like me, but the next coach will make sure he likes me. But I think he'll keep people on their toes, and that whole situation will keep players on their toes. It's different. It's something that's going to be hard to avoid, that conversation the next year, and ultimately that pressure and expectation is going to crank up to the World Cup. But let's see what happens in the Six Nations first, Ger. If they lose a couple of games there, we'll be all negative again, and the naysayers it'll jump out of the woodwork.
I think we can ignore a couple of bad results in the Six Nations. I think the Six Nations is going to be brilliant. Wales won all 4 games in
that's going to be incredibly
November
tough.
For the first time ever. I don't know what the story is of France. England appear to be back. Certainly Eddie Jones is claiming they're back. So Six Nations is going to be a brilliant
Ireland straight as quickly as possible. He's been quoted after the weekend that he wants to. Fiji's win over France, just incredible. And it's good for rugby, because sometimes, we don't see Tier 2 nations regularly getting wins against a Tier 1. In fact, it's very difficult to see any of them.
Because all their best players get stolen by the Tier 1 nations.
Yeah, we see it sometimes in the summer when Scotland were missing a good few internationals. USA beat them. Now, that's not taken away from Scotland's result, or from USA's result against Scotland. But we don't see it often enough. You see it sometimes at the World Cup, where Tonga beat France in 2011. I don't know if you remember that one. France go on and get to the final and all that afterwards. But I think that result of the weekend is brilliant for rugby. And it was just brilliant to see the Fiji players on the field afterwards singing together, chanting together. But Brunel is under pressure in France now, and there's a fair bit of negativity hovering over his head at the moment.
Where is the Six Nations for Ireland then, in the sense of the overall narrative? Like, is it it's more of a prep as much as it is the Six Nations?
It's again a good question. If I was a player there, I'm thinking it's just, I think they've a relentless attitude, and they're very driven, that group. So I think one of the key strengths and areas, and we hear a lot of teams saying the next game, and we got to refocus. But the best teams focus on the next game, the next challenge, and champions who win stuff. A lot of people who win a lot of stuff, they do kind of keep their focus.
I did hear this year though that they changed pre-tournament, and they said, we don't want to win the Six Nations, we want to win a Grand Slam, which means you have to go for every game from the get-go. It's not good enough to get a losing bonus point in the game in Paris, for example. So they were absolutely resolutely decided as a group that it's Grand Slam that there was the target.
Yeah.
And that's just about setting expectations. Like, it's not that weird to say, we want to win a Grand Slam, because of course you do. But it did mean that you weren't just concentrating on the next game.
If Ireland won a Grand Slam and didn't win the World Cup, that's failure.
Didn't win the World Cup. Yeah, I think that
it's that chance. Like,
not winning the World Cup is not failure, I think.
But it kind of is as well.
Not getting to the World Cup is different. A lot of stuff can happen. I think we need to get to a semi-final. If we get to a semi-final, then we've improved on what's happened before. You're now in the last little shake-up, and you need a little bit of a bounce to the ball in that stage. But we've got to get past the quarter-final. I think that's the challenge, and that's the pressure. And that's the reality of it. They've got to deal with this next year. If they don't get past the quarter-final, they'll be seen as, all that stuff is... Even though I don't believe it's all a waste of time, because we set so much new ground with this current group, that's the way it'll be viewed and perceived by people. Yeah.
Now, new base camp is being established. It's whether or not they can actually make the assault on the peak.
Yeah, for sure. It's
nice analogies at 9:30 on a Monday morning.
Schmidt deserves his own plaque on the walls inside the Aviva Stadium, says Kieran. Shane says, best of luck, Joe. You owe us nothing. You've been nothing but 1,000%. You will forever be in our hearts for giving us the most exciting last 6 years. Best wishes to you and your family, says Shane. On
good Twitter racing man as well. Shouldn't be underestimated. We enjoyed a good night with him there before Leopardstown. He loved his racing in New Zealand, which surprised me, and the depth of his knowledge as well. He's not all about rugby.
But I guarantee you, if he knew he was going to meet all the people, and he's into rugby, I was probably studying that day, make sure I know everything about all the horses and all this.
I was talking to Leopardstown CEO Pat Keogh afterwards, and he was just talking about the detail that Joe Schmidt goes into in terms of just everything, for example, so if there's a referee in town, bring him to Leopardstown and look after him, and just every 0.0001%, he does everything. and he's just like no stone.
Say that was off the record.
It was a small thing. It might not even have been a referee, but he's like, Joe Schmidt, there is nothing uncovered.
No,
nothing.
And I think that's what...
that doesn't always work for people, because there's a lot of, there's...
It feels a bit too busy.
But I think, it's trying to manage all that stuff and make sure that he just wants to make sure that after the match that he didn't miss something, that he didn't miss the way a referee was doing something, or he didn't miss the preparation, something, underestimate the travel time, or...
Well, because it happened. It happened.
Yeah, it happened a few times with Scotland. So, I think some things are out of your control, but I think Joe is constantly thinking about all this stuff and making sure everybody else who's delegated certain jobs, that everything goes to making the performance and the job easier for the players when they go out on the field. And that gives a lot of comfort to the players, that they know that every avenue is covered. Sometimes that doesn't work.
With his son as well, you underestimate the human sacrifice of jobs like that, where, like, he just had to have foregone family time, because, as you say, it's a 24/7 job.
Yeah, and he's working at home on the computer. He waits for him to go to bed, and then he's up half the night. But look, I think there's a lot of coaches and a lot of people in sport put in huge amount of time, and that's just a given. When you're in a coaching role like that,
don't always get
we heard
success.
O'Connell recently talking about that time frame that he's with Stade Francais now, and the amount of time that goes in. But I think it's managing that time well and making sure you're productive with it, and the amount of productivity that he creates, Schmidt, is there for everybody to see.
A reminder, of course, OTB AM is live with screwfix.ie, championing the trade with a choice of over 20,000 quality trade products. All in all, we kind of knew this was coming for a while. At the same time, it does feel like... So I was at the Graham Hunter documentary last night, the Take the Ball, Pass the Ball, and it's the story of the Guardiola era at Barcelona, and there was an assumption that when he left, it didn't really matter. They still had Xavi, Iniesta, Messi, and that amazing team. But ultimately, what that team was able to achieve in a 4-year period was the greatest thing that club is ever going to have. It'll never reach that same level again. And it struck me a little bit that, like, Andy Farrell could come in and be great, and James Ryan could go on and become the best player in the world, and Gary Ringrose can become the best centre in the world, and maybe Joey Carberry is actually the best out-half we've ever had. But at the same time, the first team that comes along that does that reaches the absolute peak, like, it is a special time. And it's not over.
It's hard to stay there.
It's very hard to stay there. And, sometimes you got to appreciate stuff while it's happening, while you're in the moment. Like, the All Blacks coming and not getting a sniff of beating us. Like, what the hell? That never happens.
That's a bit of an exaggeration, isn't it?
Well...
Obviously, the try chance that they should have scored.
I just think we were very dominant. It was the one time in all the games I've watched or been involved, and there was a few over the years. I just thought we were very comfortable. We never looked like... Now, they were poor. You could go to a World Cup next year.
There's been loads of crap New Zealand teams that came here and put 40 points on us.
Lomu played about 2 months before the 1995 World Cup. Milner Scudder in 2015 came out of nowhere and was sensational. So they'll produce...
My point is, though, that this is like a period of Irish rugby history where we're assuming that we should be favourites to win a Grand Slam. We're assuming we should be favourites at Twickenham. That's not real.
It's incredible.
Like...
Well, I don't think we're assuming. I think that's the reality, Ger. We are.
Yeah, and how much of that is down to Schmidt?
Yeah, I think it's down to the players and to Schmidt. I think, and he'll be the first to admit, there's a lot of good players there. I think under him, certain players have played above themselves. There's no doubt about that. They've got the maximum. And that's always a regret for any player, any sportsman. You'll probably agree. Well, no matter what you're in, whether you're a jockey, a runner, a cricketer, a tennis player, that you can walk away saying, Jesus, I actually got all that talent or ability inside me out. And I think he's got certain guys, he's improved their game so much. The example maybe with forwards who maybe can't pass a bit, but their skills are so much better, their accuracy at the breakdown, all that kind of stuff that maybe we can't measure and see. But I think that pressure and that there's no guarantee, and I said this after last week when we're talking about can we go on and do this, that and the other thing at the World Cup. We might not, but we're in a good shape and position to be. So I'd rather be in that position than be losing a load of games and shocking people, because we got to celebrate the here and now. 2018 for Irish rugby will be remembered as probably the greatest year ever in Irish rugby's history. And the last 12 months, when you go back to beating South Africa, we've beaten South Africa, Australia, New Zealand in the space of 12 months, won the series, won a Grand Slam. You know, it's an incredible time. But Andy Farrell could still take that job next year, and there's no guarantee it's going to be perfect. That's the thing as well,
and the contrast in Mick McCarthy with, say, Stephen Kenny and Andy Farrell, where they're taking over the best Irish team probably of all time, and this is undoubtedly one of the worst Irish soccer teams of all time. But Mick McCarthy is taken over from a mess, and he's like,
it can only get better for him.
Andy Farrell is going to take over from Joe Schmidt. It's like, the job after Alex Ferguson was probably the worst job anyone could get in football.
Imagine if they won the World Cup, hypothetically.
What can Andy Farrell do then?
I don't think they will, by the way, for anyone watching.
Well, they're second favourites or whatever, like, but you know what I mean? So Andy Farrell probably has to weigh that up. It's like, you know, my currency is high at the moment. How can it rise more by taking over from Joe Schmidt?
And in fairness to him, he stepped up and decided, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, so
now he has the players, whereas Mick doesn't.
Yeah.
Mick doesn't really have the players.
But he wants the challenge too.
But it's ballsy as well. Like, you know, he could easily have said, actually, you know what, I'm happy enough. I'm still young enough
you know
at
what?
this point.
If he stepped down as well, you can imagine how much in demand he would be, Andy Farrell. So he's actually, he has taken a chance at his own CV, and it could go.
So you think O'Gara is going to be part of the coaching ticket?
I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I think
Funny
he should
that
be.
his season in New Zealand will finish.
It is, yeah. Timing is
nicely
good.
Just
the
at the World Cup,
good.
he can cover the World Cup, and then
and it's all about succession then, maybe for him, where he's thinking down the line as well. Like, you know what?
But see, the thing for Rodgers, he'll be in demand a lot. Timing is everything in sport, but you have to be flavoured a month too. And I think O'Gara, like, if he goes back and Crusaders are crap this year, well, I think for what he's achieved, it won't affect his legacy, and the Crusaders are going to be thereabouts.
Yeah, they're going to
anyway.
be good this season, yeah.
But the one thing about Rodgers is coaching in New Zealand, which is they don't give many, like, it was a unique situation, wasn't it? And when you hear New Zealand players coming out saying,
this guy's good,
love him, he's brilliant, that's the best endorsement for me, not the trophy scenario, because sometimes they're going to be thereabouts they're going to be thereabouts every year, but the players coming out, and that's why I was going back to your thing about it's not player power, there's a lot of value taken when players endorse you. And
can you influence your only asset, apart from your brains and experience, are the playing staff you have available to you, and if you can influence them positively, then that speaks volumes to your ability to communicate your message.
That's a different
trust you.
role, Ger, because you're now managing. You're not just doing. Andy Farrell is not just doing the defence now. He's now managing people.
Yeah.
He's managing the whole group. He's managing the structure, the travel.
If I'm Leinster, am I a bit concerned about the fact that Lancaster hasn't been considered for this job, and in the long run would probably prefer to be a head coach? So does this hasten?
Well, either way, if he was considered for this and took it, he's gone. I think he's always going to attract people. I think Leo Cullen will know that, Mick Dawson will know that. They'll want to try and keep him for as long as they can. But that's just the nature of the game now. You've got to try and move on and find a positive solution, because if we kind of wallow and say, well, Joe's gone now, what are we going to do? I think we have to move forward now. I think the worst thing, it's not a mess. There's no mess here. There's no tidying up that needs to be done, and
How long does O'Connell have to serve before he can be involved in an Ireland setup, or to get back to an Irish job? Like, what's that?
I think a couple of years anyway. For himself, like, he wouldn't take a job. Like, if he has a good season this year, maybe Andy Farrell wants some part of his influence as well. I don't know. But I think for him, he'd want to be involved for a couple of years and really understand the ins and outs of being involved in that role. So I think that's a couple of years anyway. I think Rodgers got all this experience with Racing and Crusaders, and obviously he's playing time in Ireland as well. I think the time for him now I think he's enough of experience now. He hasn't done a head coach job yet, but I think for Paul, a couple of seasons anyway, you would imagine that he would require himself. But it's all speculation. I think Andy Farrell here will build a good team around him, because he'll get enough information who's the best person or people for. And here's the thing,
it's like, so when we're talking about Greg Feek's replacement,
they better be good though, and they will be good.
Yeah,
that's the kind of attitude he won't. Like, there'll be very good coaches who go in there whether they're Irish or not, and I think that's. The standard now is very, very high, and there's a bit of pressure on everybody to keep that standard. So in the coaching as well, players will demand it. I guarantee you, they'll want that that detail going forward as well.
Yeah. All right, Alan, good stuff. Johnny, thanks.